Who else you talked to? Who'd you come away going, ooh, I think they may have a good year?
UCF. I think UCF was really, really impressive. That was my first time seeing UCF RJ Harvey in person. He is
Oh
built
yeah.
like he is built like the thing from the Fantastic Four. 1000% rocked up. They got him listed at 205. I think that's 15 pounds shy of what he really is. He is a load. And the way they talk about not being talked about, that's what I heard more than anything. I talked to Lee Hunter, the defensive tackle who was transferred from Auburn, definitely as a Sunday player. He was also he's a really funny guy. Came dressed to the T. They came for a business trip. If you saw some of the players who had hoodies on and they saw had sweats on, not UCF. UCF, it was a business trip. They didn't go to announce themselves. They went just to let people know that, hey, we're a business oriented team. We have work to do, and they're going to be a good team. Thinking about Gus Malzahn, what I really saying that KJ Jefferson was the closest thing that he's had to Cam Newton is something that we've all been thinking. And I think when you think about Gus Malzahn in the past, there may have been obvious things there that he may not have said. He would always go around it, dance around it. This is the first time I've seen in a long time that Gus Malzahn is hitting everything head on. The comparisons, we finally see a quarterback that is 1000% built for his offense, even though he may not be running it on, as far as what people say. But that Gus Malzahn is going to have a big hand in that offense. And I just can't wait to see KJ Jefferson in those schemes where you talk about quarterback power and being able to step back. And he has a cannon for an arm. And his cachet receivers aren't bad either. Thinking about Kobe Hudson, who's been productive everywhere he's been, including in the SEC. He's there. He's so motivated, and he's a really funny guy, but he was all business when it came to being at Big 12 Media Days, and they definitely have a chip on their shoulder about how much coverage that Colorado was getting and how much coverage they're getting as far as who can be a contender in the Big 12, and especially since they proved last year that they can win a big game in the Big 12. So, yeah, I think UCF is ready, and they really impressed me.
Colorado goes to Orlando in week 5, which, the bounce house is going to be hopping for that one. And UCF could be 3-0 going to that game because they've got New Hampshire, Sam Houston State, and TCU before that. You mentioned RJ Harvey. We had him on the show. This guy was 1,400-yard back last year. They were worried about keeping him. They were worried because he was one that a lot of people in the transfer portal thought would be an interesting addition. UCF stepped up to make sure they kept him. And I go back, Dukes, to KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders when Kendall Briles was running the Arkansas offense. Now, Kendall's offense and Gus's offense are different. But what it did was it used the read option to set up the pass game. That's a very simplistic, rudimentary way of describing both of these offenses, but that is the base of both of these offenses. And I just think KJ Jefferson and RJ Harvey together is a pretty devastating combo.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, think about the decision that the defensive coordinator has to make when you put somebody that when you have a lot of times when you want to stop the run, you have to bring down that last safety. So you want to go 8 in the box. Well, you have to think twice when you have these guys because once they get rolling, KJ Jefferson can absolutely throw the ball. Has he been the most accurate in the past? No. Does he have a cannon? Yes. And the UCF receivers have proven that if they get man-to-man coverage, they're going to win their ones. So I think that by having such a really good battery in the backfield, when you have a KJ Jefferson who literally was dragging Alabama players last year for 4 and 5 yards down the field, we're not talking about sisters of the poor. He did this against Alabama and almost willed Arkansas to a win last year. When you think about him, then you matching him up with a guy like RJ Harvey, and then you still got Penny Boone, who had a great season at Louisville, right? Yeah. So I'm really excited to see what UCF can do, and I think it's going to be an electric atmosphere game 4 against Colorado and Orlando.
Is it bad that my litmus test for Gus Malzahn quarterback, like how's the passing offense going to look? If I just go, is he a better thrower than Nick Marshall?
That's not a bad litmus test when you look at what Nick Marshall was able to do in that offense. He's playing defensive back still today. I mean, that just goes to show you what it takes. All you need is the perfect blend of being able to run the ball, speed, being tough, and having a cannon for an arm. Because how many times did we see a guy going 50 yards down the field and Nick Marshall just letting a rocket go? So
Yeah.
we haven't seen that in so long in that offense. And it's not to say, and no disrespect to John Rice Plumlee, because I think he did a great job of that offense. But I don't think he's on the same level as athlete as a KJ Jefferson is. And I think KJ Jefferson definitely has a chip on his shoulder. Coming into last year, there were some people who even thought he had a chance to be a dark horse Heisman candidate. Now, the odds were really high, but a lot of people were expecting KJ Jefferson to have a big year, especially in Arkansas. And Rocket Sanders, neither one of them had the year that they were expected to have. So now KJ Jefferson has the picture of Shedeur in his locker room saying, hey, this is what you guys think of me. You think this is the best guy in the conference? Well, hey, I'm not chopped liver. So I think seeing a guy that motivated is gonna pay dividends for Gus Malzahn in that offense.
Yeah, it's funny when you say it like that, because you know this podcast is a big Avery Johnson bandwagon podcast. And you got Cam Rising at Utah, who's already won 2 power conference titles as a starting quarterback. Like, there's a lot. Noah Fafita and Arizona. There's a lot of good quarterbacks in the Big 12.
Yeah, there is. And I think when you look at the NFL, it's so easy to go look at the NFL mock drafts to see who's number one, to see who will be the best quarterback in the conference. But NFL success doesn't always. College football success and NFL success are different. So there may be guys who are more prototypical for the NFL that may not have as good as a season on the college level as some other guys will. Some guys are great college quarterbacks. We talk about Jason White at Oklahoma. He was an amazing quarterback, but was he an amazing pro quarterback? So if you do yourself the disservice as to just look at mock drafts and say this is going to be the best the best quarterback in the conference, you're really hurting yourself and you're cheating yourself of seeing some of the better quarterbacks who are really playing at a high level at this level.
Yeah, and I think you think about mock drafts right now. If you look at mock drafts right now versus who actually gets drafted in the first round,
right,
half the dudes you see that are named right now will not be there.
Man,
they're going to be drafted somewhere else. I mean, there were guys that were in first round mock drafts this time last year who got drafted in the 6th or 7th round this year.
There were guys who didn't get drafted. Leonard Taylor, right?
Yes,
he was a first round pick on a lot of people's boards going into the season, and he went undrafted free agent. So that's just another cautionary tale of hey, hold your horses a little bit when you base your projections solely off of mock drafts.
People really love mock drafts though, so they ain't stopping.
I've done 5 fantasy football drafts already.
Exactly. So one more before we move on, because we're going to do a little preview of SEC Media Days as well. But you watched Gus Malzahn for a long time. I want to get your take on this, because when I visited UCF in the spring, I came away thinking very differently about Gus Malzahn and how, where he's at right now. What was the Gus you saw from UCF like compared to the Gus you saw all those years at Auburn?
Totally different. I got a real funny story. When I first started spewing out information about what was going on at Auburn and their recruiting and all of this insider info that I was getting while I was making a name for myself on Twitter, there was a 14-page report that was passed around the staff about my tweets. How does he know this? He was looking for the mole. Totally different now. Gus Malzahn wants the coverage now. He wants people to know how the UCF is recruiting. He wants people to know that we're getting all of these guys on campus. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw more UCF, a team site to pop up for UCF. The relaxation that I see on Gus Malzahn, not dealing with the pressures of the SEC, quote unquote, Yellowwood pressure is what they call it. Like, he's not having to deal with that at all. And I think he's relaxed. I like the gray hair. Uncle Gus, that's what I see, man. Like, he went from Gus Malzahn, kind of the straight leg, hey, man, only Waffle House. You may see Gus Malzahn snack on a rib or two these days. Who knows? I just think that Gus Malzahn is in a much more relaxed situation, and I think that it's showing. And you're going to see, and one of the knocks on Gus Malzahn in the past has been he's been a really good guy when it comes to selecting talent, but a lot of times he wouldn't listen to the talent. I think Gus Malzahn, when it comes to his coaching staff, I think right now Gus Malzahn has his ears open and he's way less rigid when it comes to the way that he wants to do things, and he's open to suggestions. And I think that's going to open up UCF to be a much more fluid and cohesive team.
Yeah, and I was trying not to lead you with that question, but you said exactly what I got out of seeing him again too. Is he's chill, like
Man,
a chill Gus. Like you never saw that at Auburn. At Auburn, he was wound so tight, and he's so chill now. Now he's not. It's not like he doesn't care, because one thing he was very clear about when I talked to him in the spring was he's really mad that they had a losing season last year. They were 6-7 last year. He had never had a losing season as a head coach. He's like, that is never going to happen again. And so it's not like he's stopped caring. It's like he stopped caring about the wrong things. Right. And everything else he's sort of letting fall, and he's worried about the big picture, which I'm fascinated to see what this team does. You know, they had 3 transfer guys come with them in the media days, and he was telling me when I was down there, and I know this is a pitch they're making, so this is what he wanted me to get out there, but talking about how good of an environment they've been for transfers through the years, even before he got there, even when Josh Heupel or Scott Frost was the head coach, he's like, UCF's just been a great place for transfers to come and be successful. And like, you understand what he's doing there. Like, he's saying, hey, all you really great players from the state of Florida who went somewhere else and now are not thrilled with how things went, come to UCF.
I mean, and can you blame them? When you think about the amount of talent that Florida has, and guys go everywhere. They go to Rutgers, they go to Nebraska. I mean, the state of Florida has its fingerprints all over college football. So when you get guys from Orlando who previously weren't staying home and they want to get away for a while, you can always come home. And I think that's what Gus Malzahn is saying. And when you look at how successful UCF can be in this conference, last year you go 6-7, you go 6-6 in the conference, you lose a bowl game. But that's including Texas and Oklahoma, and it was a little bit of a different conference. Well, the Big 12, I'm not going to call it watered down, but it's not the same Big 12. And now UCF moves to the upper echelon where they're going to be the favorite in multiple because of the talent that they brought in. So I think that Gus Malzahn has a really good idea. And this is the other thing. UCF's collective is coming to the table, and they're not shying away from saying, hey, we're going to compete. And I think that's been the most important thing is they're able to compete with Power Four, with all of the other Power Four schools, maybe not on the level of a Miami, but they can compete, be competitive, and they can provide and they can really foster a good environment for a transfer guy.
And so I mentioned that game where Colorado comes to them, which will be a big game. I almost wonder how that's going to affect the following week, because the following week they're at Florida, which is not a conference game, but within the state of Florida is a massive thing. For UCF, it's a huge opportunity, and for Florida, it's a must win. And so that's gonna be a night game in the swamp. But I almost wonder if having the Colorado circus coming to town the week before keeps them from worrying too much about that. Like, yeah, they'll play Colorado, and then they can treat Florida basically as just another game week because they'll have just dealt with the circus.
Yeah, and also, I'm not sure that Florida, in many other years, I would venture to say that Florida's roster was much better than UCF's. I'm not sure how much better Florida's roster is UCF's than UCF's, and I think that with that attitude, see, they have a really special place in that game. They can put the chip on their shoulder. They can still get the little brother chip on their shoulder and go out and play and treat it like the Super Bowl. But they can also go out and know that, hey, we're the little brother playing because we've got players now. So now that game becomes so important when it comes to recruiting in Florida, because I did a piece on why would you go to certain schools in Florida. And right now, there are a lot of reasons that UCF is winning against Florida for certain players when you look at what they were able to do the last couple of years. But even this year, I'm not 1,000% sure, but there is definitely a reality where I feel like UCF would finish higher than Florida in the recruiting rankings. So this game could be the linchpin for UCF to become the third school in Florida. I mean, if they beat Florida at home, how do you, if you're going at UCF for a 4-star, you lose to UCF, and you think about the resources that UCF has, the success that they've been able to do, the proof of concept that they're proving now, and you can stay home at a program that has a trajectory on the way up, not down, and the stability that Gus Malzahn has on paper. Because yes, everybody says that Gus Malzahn is probably just waiting on the Arkansas job, but when you think, I'm not so sure that that's the first job. I'm not so sure that Gus Malzahn isn't happy.
I'm glad you brought that up, Dukes, because one thing when I was visiting down there and seeing how chill Gus Malzahn was, my first thought is, if Arkansas opens, please don't take it, because it's you'll turn back into the Auburn guy. Don't do it. Just stay here. Stay here and do this.
Yeah. I love what Orlando has done for him, and now you got Grandpa Gus, right? There's a lot more to him, and I think that the family aspect is going to be super important. And why would you want to move from where everyone vacations? You got a great situation. I just think that it's almost.
You realize that was Steve Spurrier's recruiting pitch when he was Florida's coach.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like James Bates, the linebacker, he's from Sevierville, Tennessee, and Spurrier comes up and says, everybody's trying to get to Florida. We're asking you to come. So, but back to that UCF Florida game, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that in the recruiting aspect of it. Let's be real here. If UCF wins that game, they're probably recruiting against a new Florida coach after that.
Yeah.
So
1,000%.
Yeah, that's going to be a fast, I think the Florida people keep looking at that game, but the fact that they play Coach Prime and Colorado and then Florida in consecutive weeks is really interesting. It is. That's going to be quite a stretch for UCF football because look, if you go 0-2 in that stretch, the world that may be all the world's going to watch of you, even if you're good the rest of the way. But if you go 2-0 in that stretch, everybody's following you the rest of the way.
You go 2-0 in that stretch, now you become that one of the 12 teams that we're talking about at the end of the season.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.